Okay.
Okay, there we go. And the link on YouTube is right here. So if you want to open that on a tab, you can see the people that are watching us as they come in. They'll chat in there.
Okay.
And we can see them live. So let me mute that. Okay, there we are. There we are. Okay, I've got the chat window open there. Have you ever done one of these before with the
No.
streaming live?
No.
I just recently started. I've been doing this podcast for 10 plus years. I started in 2006. And what I do is I stream it live and then I rip the audio out of it and then I put it up on iTunes as a podcast separately. So we've got two different versions. People can watch the video and they can also listen to the audio. So
Okay.
we've got two viewers at the moment. Hello, two viewers. All right, let me get my notes
Okay.
up for you. And let me get that up. Oh, Logan already is typing. He says, "I've played the game before and I liked it. It was a good Atari game." That's what Logan says. Very good. Okay, we will start. Any questions before we start?
No.
Okay, cool. All right, we're coming down in 3, 2. Hey, Crawl Spacers, welcome to a special interview podcast. We're interviewing the designer of the Atari 2600 Spider-Man game, Laura Nikolich. Did I get it right?
Nikolich.
Nikolich, there you go. We'll just say Laura. Brad and Laura, there we go. So, Laura, first off, thanks for streaming this live on YouTube with us as we record this. I appreciate it.
Okay. You're welcome.
So, talk a bit about you. You were the designer. You said you were a one-woman show back in the '80s designing this Spider-Man game. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, at Parker Brothers, we were the first video game designers and all the games were so small. They were only 4K a piece that only one
Wow.
person did it. I mean, we could get help. I got help with the music because, I just needed the help with it. But all the art and the gameplay was mine. I mean, it was a collaborative endeavor in that we would have meetings where you would discuss gameplay. We would play the game, we would play each other's games, and we would give suggestions. But all the coding and all the designing was done by one person, and that happened
Wow.
with all the early Star Wars games and the. I think Frogger was well. We ported Frogger. We didn't design that one, but
It's
uh,
it's amazing to think that there was one woman in charge. When you look at the credits of a video game today, they go on
oh,
like a movie.
oh, I know. I mean, two of my children are in video games. One did Destiny, and the other one did Battlefield or
Oh,
Battlefront. Battle
Battlefield Star Wars. So Battlefront, I think, is
No,
something.
Battlefront. Yeah,
Yeah.
Battlefront.
What do they do? That's awesome that you've got the second generation of video game in your family.
Well, my oldest son works for Bungie Games, I guess. He did Destiny.
Uh-huh.
And then my second son works for Electronic Arts in LA.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's an artist, a video artist, and the older son is a programmer, as a coder.
Oh, very cool. So when you I guess you were the cool mom. Did you bring the Atari games home for the kids
Oh
to play?
yeah. We had Atari systems in the house because Parker Brothers gave them to us to do design with them and to work at home. Especially since when I was pregnant with Evan when I was writing Spider-Man. And so once he was born, they just put a T1 cable into my house and just let me work from home.
Wow. What year was this?
1982.
Wow, you had fast internet in 1982.
Well, it wasn't cheap, but Parker Brothers thought it was worth it,
Oh wow. So tell me about what you used the internet for in 82. Were you uploading the information to Parker Brothers, or how did that work?
Well, I was writing the games and then I was sending it to, their main server so they could, see what was going on. And, I mean, it was basically a back and forth. It was like being in the office, except, I was at home.
There you go. Working from home in the 80s. That sounds awesome. So did they grow up? Did your sons grow up around the video game culture? I mean, this is what mom's work was, and it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, they thought that was really cool. I mean, I actually worked at Parker Brothers. I think we all got laid off in '84
Hmm.
because Atari was getting very popular.
You mean
And
Nintendo, right?
yeah, Nintendo, that was
Nintendo.
it.
Yeah.
Nintendo wouldn't share anything. Like
Uh,
Atari opened up and let other programmers, other businesses come in and write games for them. But Nintendo wouldn't do that. They ended up settling non a non-complete compete complaint because they wouldn't
hmm.
let it happen. And
See.
so, but Atari was very good about it, and but they had other companies. I mean, ColecoVision was writing for them,
Hmm.
or Coleco was bought from a Mattel, I think.
Hmm.
I'm
I
not
think
sure
so.
back when. No, none of them exist anymore.
I remember the Atari had three competitors: Coleco and Television and Atari is what the three video game systems when I
Right,
was a kid in the 80s. So
right. Well, I mean,
did
I actually did some work on a ColecoVision. I was porting Frogger to
oh
ColecoVision when we all got laid off. I mean, it just didn't become. It was financially impossible for them to keep us.
I was going to ask that later, but you worked on Frogger 2 or Frogger 1 or both of them?
Frogger won.
Frogger 1. So when you port something, you take it from the arcade designer, programming from the
Mhm.
arcade, and then you try to adapt it to the small Atari.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had to rewrite the game.
Oh
You
wow.
took the gameplay. You didn't design the gameplay. The thing with like Park, thing with like Star Wars or the Spider-Man is that we designed the gameplay.
Hmm.
When you port something, you take the gameplay as is, and then you have to basically rewrite the game so it will fit into the smaller computer.
Right. And I don't know if you designed this one, but there were two Parker Brothers games. Well, three actually. I take that back, four. There were four Parker Brothers games that I loved as a kid. Here, I even found here. I even found this at my grandparents' house. It doesn't have the game in it anymore, but I saved the box, so the box is pretty good. I played this a lot, and well, that was my favorite, of course, since I'm a
Mhm.
Spider-Man fan. Empire Strikes Back. Did you have any input with that one?
Yeah, I helped. I critiqued it. I
Okay.
mean, I was very good friends with the designer.
I love that one. I played Frogger a lot, so you had a
Hmm.
hand in that one, and also
Right.
Popeye. I played Popeye a lot. Was Popeye not
No,
one of yours?
no,
I
no,
th-
I don't
I
remember.
thought it was. All right, maybe
I'm not sure.
I
Could
only
be.
played
I've
with
got the
three,
book downstairs.
but
So,
Empire and Star Wars were two of my favorites, along with Ms. Pac-Man on the Atari. But it's cool
uh,
that you had your hands in so many that I enjoyed. Well, let's go a little bit about your background. How did you get into video games? I, wasn't a video game college back in the 80s, I don't think.
no, no. Well, I mean, when I went to school. I just fell into programming. I started out in chemical engineering, and I got my first programming class because we had to know data structures and that sort of thing. And I fell in love with it, and I
Mhm.
just changed my major at that point and
Mhm.
went into programming. At the time, it was a division of the electrical engineering department because they had no idea what it was. It
Mhm.
was just brand new. And I mean, I graduated from University of South Florida, and there was only three of us that were
Wow.
really into it. But from there, I got a job at Motorola in Fort Lauderdale,
Hmm.
and there I was doing at the time it was a precursor to cell phones, but it was pager systems.
Mhm.
So that was real time assembler level programming.
You know, if you've seen the new Avengers movie, there's a pager used in this.
Oh,
Have you seen this?
no.
Stay after the credits. You'll see a pager.
Okay, but
But what
because of that,
back in what we're talking the 70s, back when you were in
yeah, it was the '70s. Like, yeah.
when the programming for when you were at school, was the programming mainly meant for businesses, like data for businesses, or what was the programming in mind when you were in school?
Engineering college, so it was more for data manipulation and storage, and it wasn't for writing accounts receivable programs. No, it was for doing
Mhm.
actual. And another thing is like entry level, making the handlers, making that, because when I started it, we had to bootstrap the computer in the by just switching the the toggles in the front of the computer. You didn't just turn it
Oh,
on. You had to put in the bootstrap in binary.
Good grief. Good grief.
Hey, I'm old. What can I tell you?
Well, in the 70s aren't that long ago, which is amazing. I mean, how far we've advanced.
Well, yeah. I mean, technology has gone quite a far ways since
No
then.
doubt. No doubt. So you went to programming, then you worked for Motorola and pagers. How did you get to Parker Brothers?
I moved up to, this was in Florida. I wanted to live in Massachusetts. So I
Mhm.
moved up here and I actually transferred inside of Motorola. But I was at a client meeting in
Mhm.
a hotel, and I was early, and Parker Brothers was having an open house for
Oh.
computers, I mean for people. And I just kind of like walked on in, and they thought I was, what's this pixie doing in here? And they came up and they asked me a few questions, and they were absolutely flabbergasted that I could answer them.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And because I mean, how many women at that age, at that time,
Yeah.
could do real-time assembly level programming?
Right. You
And they,
were a rarity in the 80s.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a rarity for anybody. It
Mhm.
wasn't something that was well known. And so they brought me in for an interview and pretty much offered me a job on the spot.
Wow, that's
It's simply
awesome.
because, well, not only was I able to do it, but I was female. So I fit their, affirmative action plans at the time. But it was fun. It was a really good company. I really enjoyed working there.
Not many people. You say it was just like a job fair or something in a hotel?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean,
not many people are just hired on the spot too. That's really awesome that you were
well, I
hired on the
did go
spot.
in for an interview.
Yeah,
And I mean, I was actually at Parker Brothers when they offered me the job.
that's cool.
So,
That's cool. So Parker Brothers, known for board games like Monopoly.
mhm,
In the 80s, they were getting into the video game world because
right,
everybody was.
right.
They saw there was money to be made. So what was Spider-Man like one of the first games that they were working on? I mean,
No, the
was
first
that your
they
first
were working
assignment
on,
or?
it was my first assignment, but
Okay.
they got the person who wrote. I was the fourth one hired into the group, and the one person was writing the Star Wars, the Empire Strikes Back, as I think was what it was,
Hmm.
and it was. He was really cool, and he, helped me, brought me along, showed me, how to do it and that sort of thing, and so I was just, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. But yeah,
But
I wasn't the first one. The first game to being written was the Star Wars, because they actually had the license to do all the Star Wars games.
I was going to say they nabbed some pretty big titles to
Oh yeah,
release. Star Wars and Marvel, you can't go wrong, even in the 80s.
right.
So,
Well, I mean, nobody else was taking it seriously at the time. I mean,
mhm.
when I quit my job at Motorola to go to Parker Brothers, people thought I was crazy. Like, don't you want to do serious programming? You're ruining your career. I'm like, what?
Yeah, we're not really talking about pagers anymore. 30 years later, are we? Even the Motorola Razor has gone the way of the recycling
Oh,
bin.
yeah.
Uh, um, so you got the assignment. How does the assignment come to you? I mean, they say we want. Does Marvel come in, say make us a game, or how does it work?
No, Parker Brothers had bought the license, and they had decided to do Spider-Man, and they just assigned it to me. I was the next one in line. So, and initially I was like, Spider-Man, yeah, I want to do Star Wars.
Little did we
I
know they'd all
really,
be owned by Disney at some point.
right. But I mean, growing up as a girl, I wasn't really into Spider-Man.
Hmm.
I mean, it just wasn't on my radar. So I thought, oh, but anyway, I said, okay, it's your job, you do it. And I actually got into it after a while, but it was
Hmm.
more the art and the challenge of doing it. And I can't believe that, 40 years later, it's still popular. I
Yeah,
mean, that what I did, people still care about.
no doubt, no doubt. The did you have any exposure to Spider-Man as a girl when you were growing up? He's been around 50 plus years, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw the cartoons, I saw some of the sitcoms, I would see some in, my cousin's comic books,
Hmm.
but I didn't
Right.
really ever have comic books. But my
uh,
cousins did. I mean, they would, my male cousins. I
so
mean,
when you told your male cousins, "Hey, I'm working on Spider-Man," did they geek out?
they said, "You're nuts."
They
Because they
probably
think
want you to
they're
do
all
Star
grown.
Wars
They think
also.
no, they think I'm ruining my career because I'm working on a
on
game.
On Spider-Man. No, come
Yep.
on. You eventually turn them around, I hope.
Oh yeah, I mean now they're going like whoa, and
That's
they
so
tell
cool.
their kids, oh,
That's cool.
your cousin over here did this.
So what talk about Marvel, they bought Parker Brothers bought the license. Did
Hmm.
once they bought the license, did people from Marvel come in and talk to you, say this is kind of what we want, or what did they what was the input?
I gave my designs to the powers that be,
Okay.
and I never got any saying don't do that. The biggest thing that I had to fight with is that they wanted a horizontally scrolling game, and
Mm.
it was much easier to make it vertical because at that time you had if you're going to do horizontal, like if you look at the Star Wars with the Ice Walkers,
Uh-huh, that
it,
was horizontal.
it was
Yeah.
horizontal, but it's very jerky because you couldn't
Mm.
do it pixel by pixel. You had to do it 4 pixels at a time.
I see.
So you can go vertical 1 pixel or one line at a time. If you
Oh,
go horizontal, it jumps by 4 pixels each time, simply because there was nothing there. It was very rudimentary.
I
We
got
were
you.
controlling the actual TV itself.
Wow, that's awesome. Uh, t talk about the thought process. You said you wanted a vertical game. You won that battle. So
Hmm.
talk about what when you're throwing ideas against the wall. What were you thinking about that got to the Green
Well,
Goblin?
we had read the comic books. The Green Goblin was a big deal in there, so we
Hmm.
were doing that. But it was easier to do a building because that takes up less space. I
Mm.
could do because I mean you have to understand it's a 4K game.
Yeah.
So you are tight for space the whole time.
Hmm.
And if you do the building, you can just build like part of the building and keep repeating it
Mm.
because you're actually drawing it line by line.
Right.
You just don't throw up a picture. You're drawing it line by line, and each line takes up 76 cycles. So you have to do it in the point to where what you're drawing and what you're putting on there, you can fit in that program in 76 cycles before the next line starts. Because
Hmm.
if you don't, then the screen will roll.
Right.
So I mean, it was very hard.
Did you have any other ideas before the building and the Green Goblin that you remember that you were thinking about?
No,
I
I
wonder
thought
what the
it
side
easy.
scroll would be like if Marvel got their way. What I wonder that would be harder, I would imagine.
Well, it would have been, and it would have been a much simpler game because you couldn't have been able to scroll it the
Hmm.
way it would take up a lot more space in the game itself to control the background.
Right.
So, because what you
Gotcha.
had to deal with was the background first and then the gameplay.
Gotcha. I when I in 1982 I wondered why the Green Goblin was picked because in the comics he'd been dead for about 10 years. Do you know if I mean he was in the cartoons and stuff, but in the comics he was dead for a
Right.
while. Any other villains or why you picked Green Goblin as the antagonist?
I think because he could fly. And so,
Hmm.
as going up the building, he could booger Spider-Man on the way up the building.
Yeah.
And
He,
then you
he
had the little, monsters in the window or the bandits in the windows that he would take out while he was,
right. I
swinging by.
remember as you progressed farther, the Green Goblin came down from the top a little bit too. He was in the
Right.
middle part with the X's on the where the
Hmm.
pumpkin bombs were. Um, let's see. We talked about any other villains that came to Green Goblin was always it, huh? No other villains that you were thinking about.
No, not really. The biggest thing we had to deal with is like when again, it had to be simple
Hmm.
because when you write these games, there were only two sprites that you could use,
Mm.
that you could move, and you could change. You could use different sprites on different lines,
Hmm.
but you could only use two at a time. So when Spider-Man, the web was one sprite and Spider-Man was another. And so when he would
Okay.
swing on the web, then the the things he was dealing with had to be on different lines, and it's
I
very
see.
subtle, but that's the way you had to do it. I mean, it was a very restrictive system when you think about what the games do today.
Hmm.
I mean, and even when the Nintendo came in, that's what blew Atari out of the water,
Hmm.
is that Nintendo was so much more sophisticated.
Right. So for the kids that weren't alive in the 80s, let me give a background of what the game involved. It was basically Spider-Man had to climb up a building and he had to defuse a bomb at the very top. and in his way were crooks in the window, and also there were bombs in the middle section. And if you're what you had to advance by spinning your web to go up, and if your web hit the windows or the crook or any of the sky, you would fall and plummet, which traumatized me as a kid when he fell all the way down to the bottom. um, we talked about how limited you were with the Atari. I mean, 4K, is that what you said?
Yeah, 4K.
That's smaller than some pictures on your iPhone.
Yep, that's true.
Also, I thought the webbing was cool. You could shoot webs two different ways. Talk about making the web. It could shoot up, or it could shoot vertical, left or right.
No, it only shot the web itself was stuck in one place.
I know, but you would advance by crawling up, and then you would shoot it over, and he'd swing. You could hit a crook in a window.
Yeah, you could do that, but you had a very limited space as to where you could go, because this was one of the first games that actually did what was called a DDA algorithm to make the web swing like that. And it took up quite a bit of space to do it. And
it looked cool though.
yeah. I mean, it was the first game that did it, really.
Awesome. Because you had two versions of Spider-Man. You had looking at his back, and when he swung that way, you saw the side of him.
Right.
So I thought that was cool because you had two different views of him.
Right.
What was the webbing hard? You said the webbing took up a lot of space. Was designing the webbing hard, or what was that involved?
No, what the web itself wasn't hard to do. What was hard to do was this swinging algorithm.
How did you make that work?
Well, you basically had to recalculate every line and move it, an incremental amount to make the swing look realistic. Up one line, down one line, over one pixel, that sort of thing. But to keep those things in order, and you had to deal with it because we only had 128 bytes of RAM to work with.
That stuff sounds. Oh man, it's amazing a game got made back in the 80s.
Well, I mean, you work with what you got, but I mean, if you look at it compared to today's games, it's quite primitive.
As a designer, does that make you being confined so much? Does that make you inspire more creativity, you think, or?
Well, it has to.
Yeah.
But it's more technical creativity, because we had to figure out how to, make tables that could all fit and keep all your data, updatable data in 128 bytes.
Right.
Which is not, like by today's standards, it's like, what?
One thing as a kid, I always wondered, and I'm glad I can ask you this. When the song played, and you said you had help with the song.
Right.
Did you intentionally do the 60s Spider-Man song? Because I heard Spider-Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Da-da-da-da.
Right.
Like every time it booted up, were you going for the 60s song, or was that just happenstance?
The person who designed the song did that. I mean, I had basically no input into it because I was just too busy with the graphics and and getting the game to play. And we had someone on board that was completely dedicated to doing the sounds in all of our games. And so he did that, and I just put it in. I ended up, at the end of the game, taking out the last note because I needed to run for a checkpoint. The game was just that tight.
I wonder if he meant it to be the 60s Spider-Man song, or if I'm imagining it.
He probably did.
Yeah. Yeah, Spider-Man, a Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Anyway,
I didn't know that much about Spider-Man outside of what my cousins knew.
Well, maybe the cousins recognized it too. I don't know. How long did it take to design it? You said you got the assignment in 81, maybe?
No, 82.
82, and it came out in 82.
Yep, it's 6 months.
Took 6 months. So how does the design process start? How do you build the code or whatever? How does building a game take 6 months to do? What's the
Well,
different steps?
well, you start out with brainstorming with your colleagues,
Mhm,
and you decide, and then what you do is you put up the background first. I got the building up,
mhm.
and I got it so I could scroll up and down the building. And then I worked on the web, and then I put Spider-Man in. And then I had to work with, perfecting the swinging and the scrolling simultaneously. So I
Gotcha.
mean that's just the way. And then put in the other critters and just make sure everything works, and especially the not dying time.
Was the fall hard to design? Because he goes
No,
to the,
no, that was pretty easy.
that was fall
The
was
one
easy.
I didn't do it. Then we found out in beta testing, we'd get a bunch of the employees' kids to come and play our games to, see if they could find
Yeah.
any errors. And I had this one kid that never occurred to me. He just crawled up in the sky. I never did hit detect in the sky. And so he just crawled all the way up to the top and defused the bomb. And I'm like, okay, got to take care of that.
That's why you do testing. The kids are going to
Right.
find a hack.
Well, of course, it never occurred to me that you would try and climb the sky, but a kid would.
Suddenly, it's not Spider-Man; it's Superman. That's funny. Talk about the idea of putting crooks in the different windows. That was just one more task that you had to do.
That was, and that was a hard one because for the longest time, I couldn't get my crooks to come flush with the window. It was always a line in between, so they looked like disembodied, chests out there. I finally figured that one out, and it was just to increase gameplay, to increase interest. I had the sprite to use on the line, and it was a way to score, basically,
Right.
to climb up. And I guess I can't remember exactly how it scored. I think the more crooks you got, the bigger your number. And then when you got more numbers for the bombs.
I remember at the bottom you had your life, which was the two little spider icons,
Right.
and on the left you had your webbing. So if you used a lot of webbing, it would decrease, and I think if you hit a crook, it would increase the webbing. I could be wrong. It's been 30 years. It's been 30 years, but once you were done with it after the 6 months, do you present it to Marvel, or how does that work?
No, since we had the license and it had already been approved, we just put it out to market. And at the time they had the video gaming magazines and all that. So Spider-Man was on the cover of one of them, and I could dig it up, I could have it, but
yeah, he was in the middle of Marvel Comics too. There's a big full page ad of him with an Atari joystick.
Oh, okay.
By Spider-Man. Was there ever, I've always wondered if there was ever talk of a sequel.
No.
How come? Did it not sell well, or?
No, it sold very well. I mean, it was one of the and it's still, they couldn't keep them on the shelves. The problem is that at the time they had moved me on to I started with Care Bears, and then I needed help with the Frogger port. And after that, we got laid off because the game came out in late 82, came out for Christmas. And then 83, everything was going good, but by the early 84, we got laid off.
Yeah, the video game market just crashed.
Right. It did crash because, Nintendo would not let anybody else in.
They weren't playing with they didn't let other people play with their toys.
No, they didn't play well with them.
Did you ever have an idea for a second Atari Spider-Man game, that if you were given the assignment, that something you might wanted to do?
No, not really. It was like that was there and done. It's like making a sequel to a movie. It's never as good.
Right. Did you have any input with the marketing? There's a famous commercial of Spider-Man dressed up playing the Atari in live action and a Green Goblin live action.
Yeah, I didn't have any input. I was allowed to go and see the filming.
Ooh, tell me what that was like. What was that like?
Very confusing. I mean, not confusing, but hectic. I mean, we went to New York, and they were filming it there, and I was on the studio, and kind of basically had to stay out of the way, but I could see it, and it was fun. I mean, it was like a perk. This is the author. Here you go, and it was nice, but I had no input into it.
Yeah, were you able to at least Were you at least able to take a picture with the Green Goblin Spider-Man? Do you have like a Polaroid of that or something?
No.
Nothing. People have said that Green Goblin costume in that ad is better than the first Tobey Maguire's Green Goblin suit, I've heard.
Oh,
And it probably had a lot fewer budget for that Green Goblin costume.
probably did, but
Yeah.
you know.
So did that was that just like an afternoon they shot that commercial when you were
Yeah,
there?
I don't know. They might have done other shots. They might have done whatever, but we went there. We had to go to New York, so we went for the day
Yep.
and, watched it. And, it was more of a treat or of a thank you,
Right.
you know.
So Christmas comes around and your video game is on the shelf. What is that like as a designer to see your finished product on the shelf?
Pretty cool. It's like, yeah, I was going, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. And if you told people that, they'd look at you like, no, you didn't.
But you know what's sad, in the 80s, you don't I don't have the card, the instructions that were in the box. Is your name anywhere on it?
No.
Why not?
They didn't do it to anybody. Nobody had their name on anything.
Even like the booklet inside, why wouldn't they do that?
No. I don't know. Maybe because we were considered just the workers, we weren't considered the way they are considered today. I mean, like now it's like you do these games and it's like a movie and, all the credits come rolling down and stuff. When it was just a one-man deal, they just didn't think that they needed to do that. It just didn't even occur to any of us that we should have it done. I mean, my name was associated when they did the different magazine articles reviewing it and that sort of thing. They said by Laura Nikolich, and that was that. But as far as on the game itself, no.
Man,
I mean, none of us did.
Did you feel slighted? Like an artist signs their work, No, it's just part of the job, huh? You were just happy to be working in video games, I imagine.
Well, at the time, working in video games wasn't a big deal.
Right.
I mean, like I said, my colleagues considered that I was ruining my career because I wasn't doing serious programming.
Right. You showed them. You showed them. Nobody's getting interviewed 30, 40 years later about Motorola's pagers. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Let's see. The marketing crashed in 83, I guess, 84.
Yeah.
And you said you were laid off?
Yep.
About that. Talk about that. I mean, Parker Brothers just got out of it. They're going back to board games.
Right. I mean, they were very good to us. I mean, they gave us office space and everything. And they sent our names out to all these people for, jobs, for recruiting. And, I can't fault them for what they did. I mean, they were very, very good if they had to lay you off because they were very sorry about it. But, business is business,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did get a job working with the company that turned into Lotus Notes.
I had that. It was the word the Microsoft Word alternative.
Right.
Yeah. I had that on my Windows 95 computer. I remember that.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I ended up, having more children. And when I had my third son, I just stopped working because being a mom was more important to me.
It's probably easier to design video games than being a mom. So
Well, it's easy to encourage them to do it.
yeah, no doubt. You got the two boys into the field. So
yeah, the first two are into video gaming. Yep.
You talked about you worked on some other games. Was Spider-Man your favorite, or do you have a favorite?
Yeah, Spider-Man was my favorite. It's the only one that, like I say, hit the light of day.
What made this? Go ahead. I was going to ask what made this one more fun than the other ones.
Well, just because it was a finished product. I mean, I worked on Care Bears. They were going to do a young child's game to do Care Bears. And so I was working on that. But then the market started dying and they pulled me off of that and put me onto the port, which they thought would be more profitable. And so Care Bears never saw anything. I mean, I have a few, preliminary ROMs, with the game on it.
Right.
And Frogger was finished, but I didn't really consider that an artistic accomplishment because it was just a copy.
It was a port, yeah.
What
was the mission of the Care Bears game? What did you have to do with the Care Bears?
What they were trying to do is collect their tummy signals. I don't know if you know Care Bears, but
I do. I had a couple Care Bears. I'll admit it.
Okay. They had the little tummy, icons on them, and it was the Care Bear was supposed to go and catch the right icon for its color, So
Yeah.
I mean, but it was aimed for 5 to 6 year olds.
Right.
It
Right.
was a little kid's game.
But did the market crash before that one ever got released, or did it? Yeah.
Yes, it crashed. It was going downhill, and they pulled me off the game because they realized that they wouldn't be able to market it or license. I mean, they had the license, but they wouldn't be able to.
Wouldn't be able to sell it, make a profit, or whatever.
Right, right.
My second favorite hero is the Hulk, and inside my Spider-Man box I got in the '80s was a pamphlet that had upcoming games on it,
Hmm.
and there was a Hulk video game, and I've seen a screenshot of the Hulk video game. Can you tell me anything that you know about the Hulk game coming out or was supposed to come out?
I don't think it made it out.
No, it was never released, but
Right.
the picture was in the pamphlet that was inside the Spider-Man box. Any information you can tell me about that Hulk game?
No. I remember the G.I. Joe game.
Oh yeah, the Hulk game. I've only that one screenshot. It was like on 3 different levels,
Mhm.
and I forget what you had to do. But I remember wanting that the next Christmas, and we kept looking for it, and it was pre-internet. You could never find out that a game was canceled.
Mhm.
So anyway, I want that whole game. I still do. 40 years later, yeah. Um, talk a bit about the legacy of the game. 1982 to 2018, we're still talking about this game.
Right.
I saw it was named one of the top 200 games of Electronic Gaming Monthly about 10 years ago. Your
Right.
game is in the top 200 games of all time. What's that
Right.
like? It's a long legacy of this game.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised. I mean, my son bought me the magazine and said, "Look, Mom, look where you are." And I'm like, "That's nice." He was more impressed. I was just like, "What?" I mean, like I said before, I can't understand why. Like when you first contacted me, I
Mhm.
thought I was, the trash heap of obscurity.
No,
Like, why are we still talking about this?
the way I found you is Digit Press did an interview with you,
Hmm.
and I randomly searched for Atari Spider-Man history, and I saw that interview you did with them, and I got your name, and I'm like, well, let me see if I can find her, and I found you on Facebook, and it was fairly easy to find, and I thought it was so nice that you said I thought my name was lost to history, but no, you to Spider-Man fans, this was our first video game,
Right.
and we're still looking forward to the new one coming out this year on the PS4. The new, which I bet you wish you had that much help on a video game back in the '80s with like a movie crew. But
Oh,
you started Spider-Man's video game. What is that like to be the first?
it's like right place, right time.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize at the time what was happening. I was
Mhm.
just doing my job, and buying my house and making my car payments, and that's how I did it.
Did video games pay very well back in the day as a
Well,
job?
yeah, they did because we were all engineers. I mean, I was a software engineer, and they had to pay someone who knew how to do that kind of programming.
Right. It's
So
supply and
yes,
demand.
it
There
did.
were very few of you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they did start up a bonus program. Like when we released a job, a game, we all got, like there was a pool, and I forget how much it was, and it was divided among every one of our programmers in our team. But we had to, it was stockpiled, but there were bonuses included. You
What,
know,
like if you sold X amount of games, you got the bonus or something like that, or hit a milestone?
yeah, just completing the game, getting it out,
Oh,
and
gotcha.
having it marketed would get you a bonus, but the bonus was shared among everybody in the group because
Right.
everybody really did contribute.
Hmm.
From, I mean, not the programming, but the, testing the games and giving input and telling
Right.
what they liked and what they didn't like.
And marketing and stuff like that, I
Right.
imagine. Yeah.
Right.
So when the game comes out, is one of the bonuses you get like a box of them to give to your friends,
Oh
like an author? Tell me about that a little bit.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they gave me a box of 6 games, and I gave them all away except one that I kept. So it's there, and I mean, it's unopened. It's right there. And I do have a second one that when my mother passed, I took hers.
Oh, what did mom
We
open
never
it up
played
out of
it,
the, I was gonna say, is it still sealed in the box that your mom
but
had?
the one I kept is sealed in the box.
That's cool.
She let the other ones let the grandchildren play with it and that sort of thing. But I mean, it's still in good condition, and I still have the box.
That's
And I've
cool.
got two of the posters that they
Oh,
gave out.
yeah.
Figured
I
my
what
kids can find.
the artwork for the box. Do you remember how that came about? Like, how did that? What artist did it, or how did that come about? Do you remember?
I don't know who did it. I just know the marketing department dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in the engineering department, so we didn't have a whole lot of, you know, input into it.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't even asked if I liked it.
You would think you would get some input on that. Thumbs up or thumbs down.
We were the engineers. We didn't know marketing. We thought the marketing people are idiots. So,
I used to work in television. We always thought the sales department were idiots, and they thought the news
yeah, they are.
department was idiots. So, yeah. So the game is released. You get a perk of handing out a box of games. Did your sons play it, or were they too young?
Although they were too young. I mean, when the game came out, my youngest was like 3 months old. I mean, my
Okay.
oldest was 3 months old. So, I mean, they were releasing the game when I went on maternity leave. I had
Okay.
finished it, but it wasn't out yet.
When they were older, did they play it? I mean, they
Oh
they
yeah.
they had Nintendo probably to play, but did they
Oh
go
yeah.
back and play yours?
Oh yeah.
What was their feedback?
Oh, they thought it was cool. Oh, look at this. They also liked the one Activision uh, Roundup, I think it was.
Hmm.
It was where you're trying to catch the ponies, and it's a vertically scrolling game.
I think I remember that one. I'm
Horizontal.
not sure I had that one, but I think I remember that one.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna ask. I've got some message board questions from you from viewers,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got 7 viewers on YouTube right now. Let me give the opportunity for the YouTubers to write in. We've got a little bit of a delay before they hear what I said,
Okay.
but we'll ask live questions. Ask your questions now. So let's see if those 7 people want to talk to us. It's amazing. I keep going back to that 4K that you kept talking about, and
Right.
what we're doing now, streaming around the world on YouTube, 40 years later almost from this game. It's just amazing what we can do. Your cell phone is so much more advanced than anything your Atari or any
Right.
back in the day. Just
Oh
crazy.
yeah.
Are you? I didn't ask you about. Are you a gamer now? Are you still playing games?
No.
No.
No. I mean, most women aren't. I mean, my kids played. I love to watch them play. When I go into Costco and see their games on the shelf, I go, "Great, my kid did that." But as far as playing them, no. I mean, I like to play board games.
Oh, what's some of your board games? What do you like?
Uh, the one is Upwards.
It's what?
Upwards.
Oh,
It's
Upward.
like a scrap build up on the words. Well, when my kids were little, we would have game night every
Okay,
Wednesday night, and we would
that's
play
cool.
a board game.
Do you have any mobile games on your cell phone?
Yeah.
What are you playing on your cell phone?
Fishdom.
Fish.
I like feeding the fishies.
Maybe Bejeweled. Do you have Bejeweled? That's a popular one. I don't know.
No, I don't have that one. I do Words with Friends,
Oh, there you go.
and what's another one I do?
There's a Spider-Man mobile game where you're always running.
Really?
And if you go to the App Store, it's called Spider-Man Unlimited. So you can play that if you want.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
They have all his various costumes. So I imagine if this game was released today on the Atari, they would require you to give Spider-Man several different suits, like a black suit. It's that true. I was looking at my notes. One other question that I forgot to ask you: what makes a good game? Is it the same in the '80s as it is today?
No, the games are more involved today. I mean, there's strategy games, there's games where you actually have to think. Whereas in my time, it
Mhm.
was like you would do the game and the next level was the same thing over again, just faster.
Okay.
Whereas now you do a game and the challenges change. But
Right.
back then you didn't have the space to make something that intricate.
Gotcha. But the aspect of fun, I think, has to be a constant between both
Oh,
generations.
yeah. I mean,
And there were
whether
some bad Atari games that weren't fun to play,
right,
and there's some modern games that aren't fun to play too.
right.
I would think as a designer, the fun aspect would be the most elusive to find.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we had kids come in to play our games.
Hmm.
Even at the very rudimentary stages, I mean, the different people would bring in their children that worked at Parker Brothers. And hey, what do you think about this? Or we'd let them take home something to, what do
Yeah,
you think about this? And the kids' input was a big deal to us.
no doubt. So did it take very long once that kid was climbing up the sky to change that? Was that
Oh, no.
was that a quick fix?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All they could do was put a hit detect on that part of that if it goes there, that's a no.
Gotcha. He instantly falls. Yeah.
Right.
Let's hit up the message board questions. Tgon5679 is his user handle on the message board. Well, he kind of asked what I asked. Why was the Green Goblin over other villains considered? You talked about how flying was the main attraction of the Goblin, right?
Right.
That I would think that like Doc Ock with the arms would be hard because that would be multiple things moving.
Yeah, and it would have been, that would have taken up too much space because if you see, the Green Goblin is static. He never changes.
Yeah.
He just flies around.
He slides back and forth, and you have to swim
Right.
past him. Yeah,
Right.
got you. I'm going to interview the second video game designer also. I don't know if you knew Scott Adams. He did the Quest Probe games,
Mm-hmm.
and these were more where you have a question on the screen and you type the answer, and then you would see a little movement on it. If you've ever seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks, they played these type of games,
Okay.
like go past the castle.
Mm-hmm.
So that the second Spider-Man game was very different. Did you ever play any other Spider-Man games?
Nah.
You you stop with the best.
No, I mean, I wasn't into gaming. I did it.
Yeah.
I've never really played the games. I did play Tetris with my kids, but I mean, that was many, many moons ago, and it was just to shut them up, basically. I mean, they're little kids. It's a snowy day. What are you going to do?
Right. And the one thing the Nintendo did that the Atari, I don't think it had the memory to do. There was never an ending to the game. You're still fighting the Green Goblin today.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, you beat it, it just goes faster.
Exactly.
It go on forever.
Is there, when you do that, is there a number, like with Pac-Man, there's 256 levels allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
Is there will the game crash at a certain point?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it never did. I never heard anything about it. It's just, like I said, it gets to the point where it's going so fast, you really can't play it.
Oh, I see.
I don't know how many levels it takes to do that.
Right.
I never.
So the Green Goblin is really swinging by fast at the top.
Yeah, and the scrolling is going faster.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Anime Hunter from London. He's asked, what were your thoughts and feelings on being one of the people to work on the very first Spider-Man game?
Like I said, at the time, I didn't really appreciate what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was something new. People thought I was crazy for doing it. But I liked the people I was working with, and I liked going in and having fun at work. So, it wasn't at the time, nobody knew what video games were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were just toys you were making.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't serious business. I mean, even when my son went to Villanova and started in with video gaming, the fathers of the other people would say, well, why don't you want to do something serious? And he would go, God sakes, now it's $1 billion industry.
No doubt. They make more on those games than some movies,
Oh, yeah. I mean, and the designers get paid for it really well. So
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Mainly because movie tickets are $10 and video games are $60 a pop now.
That's true.
Do you remember how much this cost back in the 80s? Was it like $20 or something, or 40?
Like 40.
It was $40. Wow.
Well, but then once it got old, then it got
They
like everything
slashed
else
it.
marked down. Well, I mean, it came out for Christmas, and everybody's little darling wants it, so you're going to cough up the $40.
I was one of those darlings. My mom bought me this for Christmas. I remember it specifically. Another question from the person in London says, given the opportunity, would you work on another Spider-Man game like the upcoming PS4 Sony game coming out later this year?
Well, I don't really want to work anymore. I'm retired,
You're retired. There you go. Mr. Metz is the user and asks, what games inspired this Atari Spider-Man game?
Like I said, it was one of the first games to come out, so there wasn't really an inspiration outside of the comic books and the the cartoons and the shows.
There was, in that interview you did with DigiPress, there was some game that they said it reminded them of or something. What was that?
Oh, there was this one.
I'd never even heard of it.
It was a vertically scrolling game. It was in the
Crazy Climber.
That's it.
Crazy Climber. There you go.
Because we went to what they would do is they would Parker Brothers would give us rolls of quarters and send us to the arcades for the afternoon.
How can you not love your job? That's a great job. I mean, my goodness.
But they wanted us to play the game so we would get an idea.
Yeah.
Ideas of what we could do. And I remember playing Crazy Climber, and so that probably influenced Spider-Man.
Mr. Metz also asks, how familiar did you get with the source material? Did Marvel give you some comics or anything, or?
Yeah, we had comic books. We had the cartoons. We could watch that. It was. I mean, at the time you couldn't watch them on your computer, so you had to plug it into the VCR.
Yeah.
Do it that way. Or read the comic books. I mean, God, remember reading?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Remember reading, kids? Yeah. It was not on the tablet. Masked Guy from Fresno, California says, what are some of your favorite Spider-Man comics? You're not really, you said you're not much of a reader of comics, but.
No, I mean, yeah, I didn't read. I do have, one of my colleagues gave me one of the first Spider-Man comics.
Oh,
and
really?
He bought it in in a sealed plastic bag. I've never opened it up. I just figured that's a collector's item.
You should price it and see how much it's worth. If it's the first one from the 60s, you might have a small car.
Yeah, it is. It's a really early one. It might be the first one. I don't know. I mean, of course, I've had it for 40 years, so
that you should get it priced.
I don't think I'd sell it,
Or send me a picture and I'll tell you how much it's worth. How about that? Javi from Austin, Texas. Have you followed any of the Spider-Man games that came after, and what were your favorites?
Didn't really get into it that much. No, I mean, I saw them, but I never played them. My kids didn't have them for some reason in the Nintendos and Sony's and whatever else they got. I mean, they had every game system in the world, but they only played my Spider-Man game. I don't remember having any others. They liked a lot of the point and shoot games.
The shooter games, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought they were cheating on mom if they had a different Spider-Man game and put it in the system or something like that.
No, I just think Spider-Man didn't shoot anybody, and they're boys, so they didn't.
He webbed them up. That's no fun. Yeah. Did you ever go see the movies or anything like that? Or
I've seen the movies? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen them. I mean, they're nice. They're cute, but.
What work, another one from Austin, Texas, what work are you the most proud of and why?
I guess it would have to be Spider-Man, either that or raising my kids. I don't know. But Spider-Man was my biggest accomplishment. I mean, working on pagers or getting them to talk to each other, or even my first job was doing a nuclear power plant reactor.
Oh, wow.
Monitoring. So that was like
that would be nerve-wracking. No wonder you went into video games.
Well, we weren't actually controlling the plant. We were actually monitoring the nuclear plant.
Ooh.
But that was, I mean, it had to be done in real time because you had to know where the rods were and what's doing this and that. But that was my first job. And then I went over to Motorola and started on the pagers, and then I went to Parker Brothers.
That just makes me nervous thinking about monitoring the rods of a nuclear power plant. You could have a
You don't think they're monitored? I would be very upset if they weren't monitored.
Well, yeah, but still, what happens if something goes wrong?
Well,
You get out, I guess. Or you could have a super villain happen there. I don't know.
I guess
you could if a spider gets in there. Billiam 3 doesn't have a location, but he asked kind of like what I asked about the input or specifications that went into making the game from Marvel. Did they say don't do this, don't do that, or?
No, they pretty much gave us full reign. I think if they didn't like, I mean, the marketing department was one dealing with Marvel. So if they didn't like what we were doing, they would have said something, but I never got any negative feedback. I just figured they said, well, that works. That's okay. But there was, like I said, the game itself, the platform was so limited. There wasn't a whole lot you could do. My biggest fight was getting them to go from horizontal to vertical scrolling.
Right.
And once I convinced them that it was smoother gameplay doing it that way,
yeah,
they were on board with it.
That's cool. All right. We also have one from Lord Alford. We talked about, he wants to know also about Marvel's input. Did they just leave Atari to do whatever? Yes, they pretty much did. So, talk a bit about the release. Was it on the market for very long? I mean, the Crash, it was released in Christmas of '82.
Right.
And it was on the shelves for a year, I guess, or?
Yeah, about a year. Yeah, I mean, once the Nintendo took over, all the Atari games kind of went away or were in the bargain bin. You know, my son actually picked up one at a secondhand, tchotchke store in Middletown, Connecticut.
Oh, recently?
Yeah, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
He just saw it there, and I mean, it was there, and just like with all the other junk that people were trying to buy. He said, "Oh," and he bought it. I think he got it for like $5.
Yeah. At least I never heard about this game being put in the landfill like all those ET games were from the Atari.
Oh well, I mean, my game sold.
Yeah. That's a great soundbite. That's my game sold. You didn't have any extra copies. When I publicize that I'm going to interview you, I've had several people say that they searched for it that Christmas and couldn't find it. It must have been hot.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it made the Billboard top 10.
Oh, Billboard had a top 10 video game back in the 80s? That's awesome.
Yep.
That's really cool. Who were you competing with in the Christmas of '82? Who were your competitors? Do you remember?
Oh God, I don't know. I have the article. I could see where it was. I think I came in at number 5.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's probably the Star Wars games. The
what games?
Everything Star Wars back then.
Oh, the Star Wars games. So, well, those are Parker Brothers too. So you were raking in the money one way or the other. The Parker Brothers company was.
Actually, the Star Wars game that gave me the Spider-Man comic book.
Got it. Well, all right. Well, Laura, I appreciate you taking time this afternoon, and thank you for a big part of my childhood. I enjoyed this game. I enjoyed this game so much. It was one of my all-time favorite Atari games.
Well,
but 40 years later, I never suspected of crawling on the clouds. I don't see how that kid, even back in the day. So, so you said you're retired now. You said you're out of the gaming market, but your kids are designers now. One more time, how can we watch the next generation of designers? What games? Destiny, you said?
He did Destiny and Destiny 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one did Battlefield 1 and 2.
So you can watch the legacy, what you started through your sons. There you go. Well, Laura, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, good talking to you.
Okay.